Good morning.
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 Tuesday. My apology for the last minute change. My sister was visiting me, and then she was a bit behind to leave the house, but I didn't want to kick her and rush her out. So I was pretty sure you would be okay with me extending a bit of time. So I appreciate your patience.
Okay.
Yes.
Sure.
We are gonna, it was a long drive. She lives 12 hours away. So, but we had a good time. It was nice to have company and visits. We had not seen each other before since COVID. So it's been a long time. So thank you. And today we are going to talk about HTML and also CSS, and we will jump right into it. So in terms of yesterday, we talked about, we went through the assignment, and we talked a little bit about content management system as well, which we will have a chance to talk more about tomorrow as well. And if I do a bit of a drawing of a content management system and a website just to refresh your mind. So let's say that we have our website and we have our content management system and we have pages. So let's say we have a hotel page, hotel A, hotel B on our website that we can look at hotel information and read about hotels. So let's say that we are Air Canada. So let's say that we are Air Canada. And we have hotel pages. In the content management, you will find the same hotel. And you'll be able to update, delete if you want. And the same thing with hotel B as well. So customer facing Air Canada staff. So as I said yesterday, when you have a website, most likely you have a content management system. One of them could be WordPress. And I share a list with you where you're gonna have almost a copy of the content and all of the pages that you will have on your site, on your content management system that you will access by the staff. So anybody who should have access, who does not even know coding, will have access to the content management. They'll be able to go to the hotel page and update the content. And when they go update, then it's refreshed. So the new update will show on Hotel A or any pages that you have. Now, so this is if you want to look at an existing page, but you can also create new hotel. And then you'll be provided a template and you'll have forms, and then you will say, you will have submit, and then it will create a new hotel too. Same thing with a promotion, something with a campaign. So any pages, usually there's a version of the content management system that the developer built so that you can actually go and anybody can go and create who should have access to marketing, digital. So that is how the content management system and the website work together. So we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but I thought you would appreciate having a little refresh as well on how they work together. So let's move on to the topic of HTML, coding, HTML and content management system. And just so this is a list of topics that we had, and you can all see, right? You can see the PowerPoint, the course topics right now. Just want to make sure that you guys are, oh, now you're not going to go see because I stopped sharing. And let me make sure that we are being recorded too. Okay, good. Okay, so in terms of course topics, we are almost getting to the end. So we've learned about the digital framework, big stages, why digital, the trigger, teams, good characteristic and heuristic. Yes, we spent a lot of time. We will look at some of the traps. We have talked about how do we validate. We talk about how do we monitor as well our website. So analytics is one of them. We talk about some optimization, there will be more, and then we will talk more about some trends. So we are here now, WordPress HTML. So we talk about WordPress, so that's our content management system. We are moving now into HTML and CSS, which I'm sure you've been waiting for a long time and you're pretty excited. So where does HTML content management system really fit into our development stages? So again, we are in the stage where now we are building. So we are developing and we are coding, we are developing. So we are here. And as I said yesterday, if you are a web developer, you would do code for the website. And then you also have to do a code for the content management system. So typically, often when you create a website, you have to do the website, you have to build the pages for the website, and you have to create in the content management system all of the pages too, the template as well, so that anybody can update, create new, delete, as I just show you on the graph. Has anybody saved any of the links that I sent you yesterday for the tools for some of the HTML editors? If you haven't, then they are available on the tools from yesterday. And those tools are where we're going to be able to practice. So this is where we will practice our HTML and doing some HTML coding. But obviously, when you update your website, you go to the content management system that you have created, and there you can view HTML code as we've looked yesterday in WordPress. I was updating the title, and then I was able to say view HTML and be able to go directly into the code as well. This also resources have some very nice cheat sheet as well that you can learn, that you can use, and then there's a lot of material again. So HTML content CSS. What is HTML and what is CSS? So don't get confused with CSS and CMS. There are two different things, right? So CMS is content management system. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets as well. So now we know a little bit more about HTML and CSS. There's a link that gives you a little bit more details that you can click and you can access the content. So let's look at HTML. So there's different versions of HTML, and 5 HTML version 5 is the version that developers are using. I don't believe there's another version. I think this is probably the most recent version, HTML. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So it's the language for the web. It's the computer language for the internet. Computers talk to computers. So computers are, they're smart, but they're not smart. They need to have a common language to be able to understand each other. So think of the language. The HTML language is like the English language. It's like the Portuguese language. It's like the French language. It's a way for us to communicate and understand. So it's a set of standards. There'll be standards, rules. So it's a language so that computers can talk to one another. So HTML says the computer says when it sees HTML, you are now reading HTML coding. So the computer knows that he's actually reading HTML coding, which is different than any other kind of coding that is available. But the HTML will dictate the content and structure of a web page. So it will, and we're going to talk in more depth. It is about what is on the page. So it answers what is on the page. Now, you may get confused with designing. We've been designing. Now we're building our pages. We're building the wireframes. We're building a design. But the HTML is interested about the content and the structure and the page layout and the things that are on the page. And then the CSS is interested on the design and the display. So how do things look like? How things look. CSS and HTML is what is on the page. So you need both. To have a complete web page, you need to have both. You need to have HTML and CSS together. And you've seen when the CSS is broken, you've seen in your life, I'm pretty sure that you would click on the page and there will be no look. There will only be codes and lines of text, line of code and line of text that perhaps you did not know it was HTML. But the CMS sometimes is broken. And then when the CSS is broken, all you see is the actual code. And then you see no navigation, you see no color, you see no design. So it really looks broken. It actually looks like Xero's website. I'm being sarcastic, but Xero, as I said, it looks like it's broken at the first time I went because it so looks not conventional to any other retail website. But you do need to have HTML and CSS together so that the CSS actually makes it pretty. Think of CSS as making things pretty. And it also defines the visual of the page as well. So you do need to have both, and you will understand a little bit more about how can we utilize in the CSS and the HTML. HTML versus CSS. So here's maybe another way of defining it. HTML, again, is hypertext markup language, is a language used to create the actual content of the page, such as the text as well. But it is also where you're going to show some of your search engine optimization codes and tags that we've talked about in search engine optimization. CSS, again, is responsible for the design or style of the website, including the layout, visual effects, the background color. It's the pretty part as well. So you need first the HTML, and then you're going to have the CSS that will come and say, this is what the page should look like. So, and then content, CSS and HTML tend to work together and also independently. And there are ways that Google wants the CSS to be also included in the code so that it's optimized for CS for search engine optimization. In fact, you will learn that Google wants the content style or the style not to be in the code, but outside of the code. And often this CSS is at the very top of the page when it comes to the code as well. So it's not part of the code, and we will explain, you will understand a little bit that a bit later. So that is, you could change the CSS without having to touch the HTML code, which is a lot more efficient, especially if you need to replace your brand image. You can only replace one file. So for now, what you need to do is they are independent, and I can change the CSS and not change my HTML code and change completely my look and feel of my page if I want to. And there's advantages in doing this. Let's say that Air Canada changes the look and feel, and they want to change the look and feel for all of their web pages, and they have 10,000 pages on their website. In fact, they probably have close to that, maybe 5,000. There are a lot of pages on Air Canada. Imagine if you have to change the logo or if you have to change the style of all pages. With the CSS, I can make one change. If it's well designed and the CSS is well designed, I can make one change to my CSS, and my CSS is cascading all to all pages. And that's why it's called cascading. If you're smart on how you do, then all your pages will adopt the new style. And that's a bit of the structure. So it's cascading, right? So you make one change and it cascades to all the pages, and it's quick and efficient. But your CSS has to be not part of each of the code pages, but it sits here. So it's not in the code, so that you can think of your HTML code. We will review that in more depth together. I have a video that I want to show you as we go. But before I do this, are there any questions for anything that I just said about HTML and CSS?
No.
Okay. Do I need both? Do I need HTML and CSS for a web page to work and look good to consumer? Do I need both, or I can just have a HTML?
Both.
Both.
Good. HTML is about visual. True or false?
False.
Good. Google does not care about CSS for search engine optimization. True or false?
False.
Absolutely. Good. Okay, so there's a bit of a video here, and but let me pause it. I'm going to give you the link into the chat in case it's hard to read, to hear. So you're welcome to listen to click directly on the link from the chat or listen to it from my desk. And I'm just going to start it now.
HTML is the structure of a page. CSS is the style, and they always work together. So check this out. So here you have HTML, these little tags here. Now, this is the structure of the page, meaning that you can see this text here, and this is the output. This is what it looks like.
Okay, so this is on the left of the panel. You can start seeing HTML code. So if I bring your attention, let me just do the annotation. Here, this is HTML. Now, this is what the customer sees. So this is the web page. So he's using an editor that has side by side your code and then what the customer sees. And then you're starting to see some HTML code. Head, you've heard head. He's putting style in here too, but in theory, you shouldn't really. You should try to put the style outside of this area, but that's okay. Okay. So you're starting seeing some HTML code, and I will just carry on.
Looks like in the browser. The style, the CSS comes between these style tags, and it says the background is blue, which is why the background is blue. If I remove the CSS, you can see it's just all white. This is what it looks like without the CSS. So the CSS takes that formatting and it makes the background blue. It makes the background red. It makes the background blue and the font color white, and they always work together. The cool thing about HTML is that it's on almost every single page on the internet. Google, Facebook, Yahoo, Baidu, Wikipedia, Twitter, Amazon, WordPress, NetEase, Soso.com, Tumblr, every single website on the internet is made with HTML, so you kind of got to learn how to do it. HTML.
Okay, so as I said, that was a really, really short video. There's also a reading that you can read as well, which I really encourage you to do so in the for today's sessions. And it just my PDF is closed. I'm just going to open it again.
Eve, I have a question.
Yes.
Now that you show us how is the code, is there any way to identify inside the code which one is HTML and which one is CSS? Because one is for style and the other one is for text. But once you see the code, everything looks exactly the same.
Yeah, so I'll show you what some of those clues are to see style and to see just the HTML. I will definitely. Okay. So very good question. So let me, what you will see, one of the things that we saw in the video, so as an intro, there was HTML. So we saw something HTML, and then at some point we saw something that says something about style background. And then blue, for example. Okay, so this is not the exact code, but it looks something like this. So style is an indicator that this is a tag that says something about style or visual. So that is kind of CSS related. And then there was that text as well. So background text, it was white. And then often you're gonna close, I believe you would close a style as well. And then you're gonna move on to your head. And but then you may have the style inside your head too. And then you're gonna see body, you're gonna see paragraph. So this is all HTML. This is still HTML. but it's a specific tag called style that says the background is, and then when you have style, you expect a certain format of style of what. So style of background. So this is, think of style as what. So you will see more of these and then you'll become more familiar. But it's all HTML code. But when it's saying, I'm giving you HTML because it's all HTML. From this moment that you see HTML, the computer says anything below this specific tag is HTML. So Mr. Computer, anything below is HTML. Now I'm giving you a tag called style. Then you're going to see there's style for bolding. There's also style for italic. There's style for paragraph. There's style for lines, for listing, for bullets. So we're going to learn about tags. But this is all HTML at this point. But now this one is dictating style. And then for background, then we had text, and there's probably other two. There are many tags for style too that are relevant. So you will see them, and then you will see that Google says, try to not put any style or any visual or CSS into your HTML code. Just have a file, put a file into your head, and we will see some example that the file then is outside of your code, and you can just access that file independently, make some changes, and it will cascade to all of the style for all of the pages that you have, which is more efficient. But yes, this is one way that you will see it. What is HTML? So again, the HTML is the you're gonna hear the markup, the symbols or codes. So think of style you can think of style as a code. You can think of P as paragraph as a code. You're going to see body as well. You're going to see head. So these are codes. So the computer is saying, hey, HTML head, HTML. And then he has a certain way of interpret and do with those elements too. So it's in the file. So it's going to be HTML.html often, and you have those files that are saved somewhere. And it's all intended for display on web. So anything that is web browser related, the internet, is the HTML. The World Wide Web Consortium, which I give you an address as well, will set the standards. So there are standards that we all have to use, right? It's like English. There are ways that we can talk. There are ways that we can do conjugation. There's ways that we do French sentences structure. They need structure so that we all understand the structure. So you need to have standards so that we all align. And then the World Wide Web Consortium sets the standard for HTML so that we all speak the same language, right? It's really so that we can all speak the same language. When you think of it, another analogy we could think of is think of COVID and vaccination and passport. So we've been saying, okay, people are being vaccinated. We're probably going to need vaccination for when we travel. We're probably going to need to show some proof in something. We're going to need to agree on standards so that everybody's looking at the same thing when it comes to vaccination. If someone has been vaccinated, so that it's also legit, so we can understand it, it's legit, and we can talk to one another. And we are clear that it's really someone has really been vaccinated and they can safely travel and come into a country. Same thing with HTML coding. We understand this is an HTML code, and I understand then as a computer, I need to do this. So I see a head. Now the head will do this. I see a body, I do this. I see text, I do this. I see images, I do see this. I do see a link looks like this. I do this with the link. So again, what is HTML? So, so again, hypertext markup language. It's really a language. It talks about the structure of the website. It's the building blocks of HTML pages. There are tags. So we're going to learn some tags. Some of the tags that you will see are heading or head, paragraph, table, list, on number, order, list. So this is where we see 1, 2, 3. This is where we see bullet points. You're going to need to learn those tags too. And there are multiple of them. And I give you a cheat sheet as well. And browsers do not display the HTML tags, but use them to render the content. So the tags, they're invisible. to customer, unless you do right click. So if you want to see the code, or if you go inspect the code on your pages, this is where you see your HTML code. So we've already looked at some of how we do this when we've done SEO. That hasn't changed, and this is where you see your code on your page as well. Okay, so each element or each tag has a purpose. So we saw style, we saw head, we saw P for paragraph, we will see body, we see multiple. So they each have a purpose as well on the page to accomplish. And you always have a pair of tags. So you have an opening and a closing tag. So if you notice, we saw HTML at the beginning. And then at some point, you expect a closing tag. And this is the closing tag. This is what makes it the closing. So at this point, it says anything between this tag and this tag is HTML. So when you see an opening HTML tag, you know that at some point you will see the closing tag. So all tags have an opening. All tags have an opening, and they also all have the brackets. So the opening, angle brackets, opening. So all tags do this. So the computer again knows that when he sees there will be a tag, and he will expect. And if you don't have this, then it will mess up the code as well. And your code is not going to respond. So maybe you'll say, I want to see something bold, and it may not be bold because there's no opening tag, and the computer gets confused. So it's giving the computer to know exactly where to start and where to begin and understand each of the elements and where to stop as well. Okay, we're going to see multiple examples, but these are basics that you need to know or be aware of. Document type definition. So there are different document type definition. One of them, and the ones that we are going to be paying attention to for us, is the HTML, obviously. So we're saying this is a document type. So we're telling the computer at the very beginning, at the very top of the code, you are now reading document type HTML. And the way that you would do this is with this specific HTML code or tag. So again, if you notice, we have a opening bracket, then we have exclamation marks that says document type HTML. And in fact, the exclamation mark, I believe, is, you will see that when we use the exclamation mark, often it's notes between developers. So it's a way for developers to put notes themselves to help each other as developer. The computer doesn't necessarily do anything with it. It's more for read-only for the developers to be able to put notes themselves. Why is this important? It's because developers spend most of their time in the code. So the code is the Bible for developer. And developers 90% of the time will go to the code source. So if they are going to go to the code, you better just put notes there so that people can have instructions. So instruction as a coder, a developer, of maybe warnings, things to do or pay attention to. And I think they can search and on search the code and say, show me all exclamation marks. And then that takes them to probably all exclamation mark to see if there are notes for them as instructions or elements to think about. So the computer knows that it's a note for developer, and he probably just doesn't do anything with those notes, but it's more for the developer. You will see some other example too. But here, all of this document type says, and it's usually at the very beginning of your code, you will see doc type, HTML, and that's it. Then you know everything below it will be HTML until you have your closing HTML, if we follow the rule. And that is your file and your HTML file too. So usually you will see document type at the beginning of your file. As a developer, then you know that you're reading and you're dealing with HTML. And you will see that we can use that for other kind of notes too for the developers between them. and we've seen in the video, we set a document type in the video. So let's see if I can maybe go back to this video and then I will pause it. You can see an example, but I will be sharing with you example of that code as well as we go more.
HTML is the structure of a page. CSS is the style, and they always work together. So check this out. So here you have.
Okay. So we're looking at a piece of code, and line 1 of our code is doc type HTML. And then it carries by line 2 with opening up HTML. So opening a bracket, we say HTML. Then we're going to learn that this is tag head, and we've learned in SEO as well. In the head tag, so this is a tag, you're going to put your title. So title is another tag, HTML tag. So we've learned the title in the SEO. Then we have style, but we could just not put style, and it will leave the default to white. And in fact, we try not to have any style in the code if we can to avoid. Then we say in this code, all we have is a title of the page, that which we know for SEO is really important, and party tips for Andrew WK. Then we say we're done with head. There's no other element in head, but you can have many other tags in the head. But we say we're done in here, so we're closing the head tag. So we're saying, then there's going to be another tag for body, and we're going to learn about the body. But we've learned the tag H1. If you remember in SEO, that is your header one on your page. Party tips as well. Okay, so all of this is HTML code. Now, often what you will see is usually head will be your first or very at the top of your code, because it's also part of your head and it's part of the beginning of your code. Then you will follow by your body and text. So now you're starting to have text at this point, and the customer can see, right? It's the title, the header that you will see on your page too. So your head, your title, your H1, your H2, your H3 are HTML tags, and they all have an opening and a closing. See my closing, see my opening as well. And you will see this is true and this is consistent across. Okay, so closing style, closing my H1, closing my head as well when I'm done. So at that point, it expects something else, or perhaps if you may be done with your HTML at that point. So if we were done with our HTML and we said, this is it, there's nothing else on this page. This page only has a title and a header. Then I close my HTML. Then I say, I'm done. And there may be something else that will follow as well as another piece of code. We don't know. Okay. So believe me, you'll hear here and have, we'll see more codes and you'll have a chance to practice too. So let's just carry on. And okay, so here are some examples of tags that you've seen that you will be able to practice or you'll be able to use. So let's see, there's an element, there's a tag for bolding. So if I want to bold text, then I would use open bracket. So they all have open bracket. B for bold, easy to remember. So anything after this will be bolded. So any text that you will put, you will be bolded text until you say, I'm done with bolding. Okay. But let's say you never put you're done with bolding. It may create, everything will be bolded. But at some point, you will have to have, I'm done with my HTML2. So that you're done, your code is done as well. Another type that you will see is EM for emphasized text. We will look at what is emphasized text. If you want to do italic, you will use open bracket, italic. So everything will be italic in your text until I say I'm done with italic. Then you have mark. Mark will highlight exactly this in order into your text. It will highlight in yellow. your text that you have. So if you want to highlight, it will highlight it with this open bracket mark. If you want to do small print or fine print, you could use your small as also as a small. It will make your text smaller as well. But I would probably use Cascading style sheet to do this, which instead of doing into the style into the line, but sometimes you may want to do smaller text if you want, but you could also play with font style. But I'm telling you, you're not going to need to know all of this in this class at this point. But strong, if you want to do strong text as well, it will cause the text to stand out from surrounding text, usually displayed in bold, but perhaps you may want to use bold too if you want to. But this is a small nuance that if you want to play with, you can play into your code as you go. Sub and sub as well, you don't necessarily going to see them. You will see most often, the ones that you will see that you will use in your code, you will see bolding, you'll see italic, and you'll see other tags as well in the cheat sheet and later on and further in some of the examples that we have. Okay, now we're starting to look at a little bit more of a complete piece of code, HTML code, and this will be a good way for us to refresh some of the things that we just talked about. Okay, so what do we see here? We see the doc type. So we're beginning. So this is HTML. We could say this is an HTML page. So you probably have somewhere you were giving a wireframe or a design. And then you had a layout, you had some content, and then you had, this is where your body. So you had something that says, this is where you're put the actual content. So your page, this is really what the customer sees. According to this page, this is really all of what is on this page. This is where you put your content. It's a white page. Okay, so if we look at the code, if we were to look at the code of this pages, so we have doc type HTML. Now, this little exclamation mark, you see that we'll have other exclamation mark here. So these are instructions, notes to developer. These are also notes to developer. Exclamation mark, this is a comment. Exclamation mark, comments will be ignored by browser. Expression, use comments to keep notes for yourself or others. Okay, so it's not visible on the page, right? They're not visible to the customer. They're not here, but they're just note for a developer to developers. HTML. So I've opened my HTML. I say anything below will be HTML code. Then I have in green my head. So I have a set of tags and elements for my head. And as I said, head is usually position 1, then you'll have your position 2, and then you'll have your note at the end. But you can also have notes in between if you want to. You would try to avoid. You want to have clean code too. But that's something that developers have to make sure that is in place. So we have our first head. So we open head tag. So we say anything below will be head until you close it. But before I do this, now that we have opened HTML, at some point there'll be a closing HTML. Ding, I'm closing. So all of this then, at this point, is my HTML. My first is a head. So I expect then a closing head, right? Then I have a body. So I have a section for body in this code. Then I expect a closing body, which I see. And that's it. So this page really only has one line of text for the consumer that they will see. But the page has a title. We've learned the title. So I have opening, I have my closing. Then I have my meta name, description, content. So if you remember, SEO description. Then we have a meta name, author. So then this is maybe you may want to put your name too. So we have our SEO elements. Then we're say close with head. Then we move into the body. So this is your text. So we say, I'm opening my body. This is where you put the actual content. So this is where you put your paragraph with your keywords, right? With your keywords for your search engine optimization. Come and visit Africa. Africa is a beautiful destination. Travel with Gap Adventure. Only us offer you safe travel, blah, blah, blah. View images or view more about Africa with links. So you can put some links. We're going to learn the tags about the links. This is where all of this happens. Then I'm done with my body. And I say this page, I'm done. I have put some comments with HTML. There's a resource that I have shared here that you could probably spend and find more information about. So I would say this is a piece of code. This is probably a simple piece of code, but we could do simpler than this too if we wanted. Now, this does not mean that all heads only have these elements and that there's and then nothing else, right? This does not mean that we only have one body and this is it. Like, obviously, there are pages that are very complex, but this is to show you some of the basic or some of the most simplistic type or example of codes. But really, they all going to follow these elements. Opening doc type HTML, opening HTML. Then you're most likely going to see head. Then in head, you most likely see titles and meta description, and you may see CSS too. So you may see your CSS file into the head that will link to an external file as well, which is even better. We will look at some example, and but they are going to follow opening tag and closing tag. So here, okay, if I wanted to do this in bold, I would do then my B bold, then I would do closing bold. I want to do italic, then I would do italic, then I would do my italic in between the text if I wanted as well. Okay. So 4 main set of HTML tags. So tags, you're going to hear tags, you're going to hear tags you already have. So head HTML is a tag you're going to see most often. You're most often going to see head for your title, your meta description. You're going to see your title, as we say. You're going to see body as well. Body is your text. Then we also said we're going to see H1, H2, up to H6 is another type of tag that you will see very commonly. You're going to see links, AR reference for link. You're going to see images as well. How do we do insert images? And then again, they define the document as a web page. So HTML web page, your head, your header, and you may have some style sheets into your head, like style. We saw in the example of video too. And then your title as well, okay? Here's a visual representation of just another way of talking about what do we see and what will be in which order. So our head, so we have our document type or HTML, we're closing, we are head. Put things like your title, info for search engines, right? SEO, and then you have your title. Then you have your body, the body of my story. So this is customer facing. And I close my body and I'm done with that piece of code. So I give you a lot of example like this so that you can see the patterns. Here's another way of representing it too. So I have some content. So really there's one piece of content here that a customer will see is content of the page. If the customer was looking at this page, they will only see that there's only a piece of content. But we have our HTML, we have our head, we have our body, our text, closing HTML. Okay, here's another way of showing it too. I'm using color, different color if you're visual. And then is there something here? I think we're good. We've talked about this. And then here I showed you SEO as well. So, but we've said this is your head part, your SEO element in your head. And your body part, so text, content, that your customer will see. And you may have, right, we saw instruction, blah, 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 instructions, blah, 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 for the codes, for the coders, for notes to themselves as well, if they want. They often do this for troubleshooting too. So, and then here's another, just another visual way of the same of that. Before I move to some SEO refresh in relation to HTML encoding, is this new for most of you, or some of you are familiar? I know Tony's definitely very familiar, but do we have anybody that, or most people, this is new, never heard, never seen? Are we following?
This is the first time I've seen the HTML, but I think I'm following. Yeah, if I have any questions, I'll let you know. Thanks.
Perfect. So let's go back to how do we look at the source code or the code of this page if we wanted to look at the code? I do right click, remember? So I do a right click and I say, view page source. Let's see on the real page. So I'm looking at a code of this page, this reading that I share with you. So, and this is what, and what you know, and what really you just need to know as a digital specialist, so that you can look and do some basic, do I have the elements that I should? Or, and now by looking at the code, you're going to be a little bit more familiar with our bite just with this morning. So what do we see on the page that we've talked about so far? And let me just my pen it over. Okay, our doc type, line number 1, right? We said we have a doc type, HTML. So we're saying, we're telling to the system that we have doc type, HTML. Then we have also HTML. We are opening up our HTML. This is why it gets complex. This piece of code is very complex, right? It has a lot of them you haven't really seen yet. But it says HTML language English US. So it has a little bit more element. It adds actually the language in here, English US as well. So we're hoping that further down, we should have a closing HTML. This page has, 667 line of code. I was showing you the very basic elements with a few line of codes, right? There were maybe, I don't know, 10 line of codes, really. This one has 667 lines of code, but the last line of code is our closing HTML. So anything in between, the computer is reading it as this is HTML that I'm dealing with now. And then at least we've seen our closing or closing. So let's go back to what do we see next? We see head. So there's head, and then it's with meta. Typically though, you will see HTML, and a good code will use indentation so that it's easier to read, right? Visually for a coder to scan through. Here you see that it's all on one line. They have the doc, then they have HTML, then they have head. It's all bit harder to read as opposed to going down this way. They just put everything on one line, but the lines is still there. The piece of code is still there. Then they have meta. So we have some meta name, meta description. We've seen meta description and the content, the description. And then they also probably have a title as well. Oh, see, we have a note for a developer as well. And this, the site is optimized with the Yoast SEO plugin version 16.7. So they're giving to the developer to say the site is optimized with this. So it's a note just for the developer to follow. As well, the computer doesn't really do anything about it. It's kind of ignore it because it knows that it's a note for developers. Let's go down, link. We're going to see some link as well. And then these are probably links to navigation too, and there's no CSS, right? This is really, if we think of This code is only the code and tells what the page will be. There's no content management system. And what makes the code on the page pretty, it's because when the CSS is applied, it looks more like this. So here we're looking at HTML and CSS. And it has a style, look and feel. But we just look at the HTML with no CSS, then this is it. It's the page and the content and the structure. What else? So we see style. So there's element for the actually closing style. So they've opened style. Okay. Style type text CSS. So they're saying something. They're giving you instruction about the CSS, the text CSS in very specific instructions about. This is where it gets really complex, and I have no expectation of you knowing any of this. But at least you can see that there's a style type of CSS, and there's some CSS indication in here too. And then we're closing the style. So if you wanted to do, or the designer wanted to look at the style, this is what it would look like. But they would probably do Control F and do type in style and then be able to see and tag it to the style. Then they would maybe do some troubleshooting here too. Then you have a bunch of links. Some of them may be part of your navigation too. Again, that is getting more advanced.
Yeah, the line number 70, that is the actual CSS style.
Okay, so, and it's taking you to an external file, right, Tony?
That's right. Yes, that is the external file with the CSS style.
Thank you.
For the main style, did you see 74, yes. 75, 76 will be styles, only styles, individual files outside the main code. Because in this case, like you said before, this has like 600 lines.
Yes.
Yeah, so you have 600 because you have a lot of code outside.
Yeah, okay. So there's a style. So they say, for style of this page, we use an external file / code. Hopefully, we can only change that code once or make a few changes. It will affect all of our pages on our website instead of going to each individual pages. An example, let's say that they say we want all headers now to be with a background of green because our brand and look and feel is green. So hopefully in that one file, it says headers, header 1, background green. I make one change and I say I'm going to change for orange to green because we're changed. You're hoping it will affect all of the pages on your website. That's the principle. So that you can change look and feel easily if you've done it in the right way by one file through your style sheet. And if you see, we're kind of still at the top. There's a lot of line of codes, but it's early on and it's not later on, and the style is usually dictated at the top. And you deal with that. Now, the style is often done by the designer too. So often the CSS, even the HTML often will be done by some HTML developer, which you will hear as front end developer. And they do CSS, they do your graphic design, they do your HTML, which is different than your backend code developers that will do a lot more advanced in backend and databases and connection with all the system that you have. But they work together. But when you hear style, usually or often it will be the graphic designer, HTML designer that will manage it. And then they will work with coders and they will integrate and troubleshoot too. There's multiple approaches. But thank you, Tony. So, and we see HRF means link. This is how we tell the computer, this is a link. You have to link. For style, you have to link to this file. And then he will look at this file for the style, and then he will apply it to all of the liner codes. So this page has many elements of codes, and now you're starting to be a little bit more familiar with some of the elements that you will see. I'm trying to see style, header, class, div, you will see div, don't need to know. And then we have form. I'm trying to see if we have maybe some bold. Okay, let me share with you some, I said there's a tag that you will see for, this is the unnumbered listed, so it's bullet points, right? Tony, correct me if I'm wrong. So this little guy here is at some point in this page, there are some bullet points that you will encounter. We have an opening and we should have a closing, and our closing is kind of here, right? A closing number. So there's a lot of codes happening around just the bullet points in here that can feel a bit overwhelming. And trying to see if there are other, okay, so we have, let's see, we're gonna find our H1 too. So we have our H1. Our first, there's a header. The difference, okay, so HTML versus the difference is our page header. And if we go back to our page header, so here we found our H1 that we talked about, which has a lot of power for search engine optimization. So if you, and this is, what is the difference, right? So this is how the H1, and hopefully these are keywords for your SEO that you put into your head ones, but through the codes, this is where we found it through the codes. So here it's not pretty, but here it's been pretty because the CSS has been applied that we've seen in our file too.
Yeah, for special characters, you always will need to use code, like in that case.
Yes, if you want to do also special in that specific.
Yeah, in that specific, you will need to use it because otherwise, if you use normal text, you will get an error in the site and doesn't work for SEO again.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we're lucky we have a real expert coder in this class too, who's done this, but he's made the choice not to go digital. But this will help him because he'll be able to challenge the developers. What is the other piece of code that we'll see? So now we're seeing a H2. So this is a header, but not your main header. And then somewhere you're gonna have HTML and to fundamental languages for building and and then we close our, and then in this case it was bold. It was even made bold. So you can almost say, I think this is a term is in style, or we're applying a specific style in this piece of text, in the part of the page on the text. And we're making this header bolded. But you could say that we would want all H2 to be italic in your CSS. But you would say for this specific H2 on this page, I want to make it bold. So you override, you're overriding, but that sometimes is not efficient because you may have a lot of overriding that you may have to go and replace and rechange because now you want it to be all standard. So that's the other thing, but you can overwrite your CSS that is dictating, like we have here, to all of your pages. It says all H1, let's say, or all H1, and all H1 will look, and it will say H1 equal X. So they all going to look like X, X, X. But if I want this H2 to be, the H1 to be an I could change my style to make this H1 high Y, but I have to remember if I want to change and be consistent that I have to go and update. So it becomes not efficient, but you can override some of the styles if you want to. Don't worry, we're going to repeat. We're going to talk some more about these items. And I'm trying to look at, so we have paragraph. So paragraph is just body and text. It's really just, this is where you're starting to put text on your page. We have another H2 at some point, but we know that it's when we have an opening, we have to have the closing, etc. So there's a lot on this particular small little pages that we see as we see. But we see our H1 or H2. It's actually a good little articles and good reading for you to see some more application and some more example too. So what we've done is we've looked at how do we look at code on a page, which we knew because we've done through search engine optimization, and then we also look on page and see how some of the style is being applied. Okay. Let's carry on to SEO refresh. And then we're going to go back to the code and you'll be able to do some editing in your code. For SEO, search engine optimization, we remember that our body, our head, was where you would see most of your SEO. So they are tags. So we've learned about the tags. Now we have our HTML, and then the titles are meta. We have multiple type of data. And then we have the description ones that gives you your description, what you see on Google search result as well. That should all be familiar already. Then we've said when we work on SEO and why you will be looking at the code is you will want to know if we have a title. You will want to know if you have your meta, as we've taught. You want to know if you have your headers into your headings too. And then your meta description for keywords as well will be another element. And how do we do it is what we've done through our sources, view source, or you can do inspect pages as well. So that would be a quick way for you to be able to see, is there something here on page that I can do to optimize my search engine optimization? This is an example of Acme design, the meta name description, content. So we've seen this. Now what we know though, is we know where we would insert it into our head, in which usually comes after your HTML as a first piece, which consumer don't see unless they do right click. And we have content, keywords. Boy, okay, something is happening here. Hold on. Okay, so we have our descriptions, we have our keywords, and then we have our title too, all in the head. Okay, we talk about linking. So I'm not going to talk about linking, your page layout. So with CSS and page layout, as we said, Google has a preference for your style to be outside of your code and not be inside of your code, and not have style in too many places of your HTML code on a page, because that also slows down your pages. It's not efficient, and Google will look and see, is the CSS more of a link that takes me to external? And then he wants to avoid to have too many styles into your code as you go. And then if he starts saying he's not going to be happy, then he might be penalizing you. And when you do these SEO assessment and audits, hopefully if you do it yourself, or if an agency works with you, that will be something that it will surface if you're not fully optimizing CSS outside of your code. They will tell you, which we knew. Images. So we talk about your alt or your alt tag. So that was something that we've seen. We have to have alt tag into your images or any of your video as well. And then we're going to see also what the tag is for your hyperlink on the code. Your code has to be valid and clean as well. So if you start having messy codes and unclean code and there are errors, now we know that errors can also through your inspect. And then some of you, and I know Tony uses, has a lot of advanced capability in your browser too as well. It will validate your CSS. What else? Your HTTPS being secure, saved. And that was more not necessarily code specific related, but elements for SEO. That should all be more of a refresh for you at this point. And then this is an example of a meta CSS. No, if we look at this code again and try to think about all the elements we taught this morning, we have our doc type, we have our HTML language, our heads, our title, our content, keywords, and descriptions. And at some point, there should be a closing head in here. I share a source that you can review and read. So this should become and starting to become a lot more familiar. And then we have another example of a code as well. And that is part of a reading, one of the reading that I think we just looked at, that we just clicked on. Okay, before I do this, are there any questions, anything on the basics that you want to know or you want to ask? Are we clear on
No
where
worries.
is this code?
Thank you.
Okay, and you'll have a chance to practice soon. So on the editors that we have. So here we're looking at a web page, and then we have a specific image too. So what would the code look like? Let's look at on the site. So this editor, I don't even know where this editor and what editor that will be, but there's a link to the source that I provided, and I think there's going to be more information about this particular piece of code. But we have HTML, so there's no doc type here. but we have at least the opening HTML, and then we have the head, and then the page title says, welcome to 1 month. So if we were on a browser, we would see at the top on the title of our browser, the tab, we will see welcome to our 1 month, and then we close the title. Then in this particular web page, which is the most basic, there's only one element for your head. We're already closing our head, so we just have the title. But we could have keywords, we can have description, we could have anything that we wanted. Then we have the body, and the body is this text. So this is all customer facing, right? Customer facing. And then we have a H1. So we have our big Willy style H1, we close our H1. And then we have an image, and then we're gonna learn to tag for images. Images are tricky because when you're gonna try to do your HTML code in your images, the images also have to be loaded to the web so that you can see the computer can connect to the images. If the images is just available on your desktop, if you were to go live, it would not be available. And that happens all the time when you often do testing and QA testing, because they also have the part of the environment where the pages are. And then I will say, if you try to put images to the code that you do on the editor, it's not going to work. But on the WordPress, you will be able to load images. And then when the images are loaded where the web pages are, then everything is connected and they will show. But there's a specific tag for images that you will see on the cheat sheet or in some of the code, and it's open EMG, and then it will give you have to give the location of where the images are to be found for the computer to go and find them in that specific location. And then this is our little images. We don't see the piece of code or where the location, but we have text, and then we have our H1 as well here on this. So that's one. Then let's go. Okay, so this we've already talked, and I'm not going to go over the details because it's becoming very redundant. Is there a tag that we haven't really seen yet? Body. So the body text H1P, your paragraph. So if you want to do in a single line break, if you want to have a line break so that you start your next item. If you want to do a thematic, I haven't really used HR, define a thematic, changing the content. And then these are a comment or instructions. So there's nothing new. And then again, your basic. Okay, exercise. Now see keywords. Okay, good. So I think I should probably see if I can find. Okay. I'm going to open up the PowerPoint. Okay, so in this specific example, so again, what I have done is I have the a bit of a screenshot, a snapshot of some of the elements. So if we were to look at the code, some of the code for this little element here, you would have hopefully the HTML, then in the head, and then the title, inline style sheet. So this is for SEO, what we've seen. This is what we see here, inline style sheet. We close the head, then we say the body, and then we're saying H1. So this is our H1. And this is an example of a install of a specific element in the color that we want for the H1 to adapt. And so we say H1, and then we say style, and then we say equal color 36. So these are, think of it, the color code. Okay, so there are, each color has a specific color code that you can use, and they're going to be variations of color. So there's reds, and if you say red, we look on the video, it was saying they were using red, they were using blue, and it's a specific red. And then if you say blue, if you say green, if you say gray, you can say red, green, blue, and it will be a standard red that there's no really specific red. Now, let's say you want to have a variation of a red for your website and for your brand, and that will be something that the graphic designer would decide. They have different multiple variations of red and blue and gray and all of the color, and then as that are known with a specific code. So you don't need to know all of those codes, but you may see color code this. That will be a very specific color. I don't know which color that is. I don't know if Tony knows what that specific color is, but it's a very specific color. It could be a variation of a red or a green or a gray. And so you say, oh, it's actually blue, but it's a variation of a blue, right? But it's a specific blue. It's not the big blue that we saw in the video. It's just a variation of a blue. And then we're saying we want for H1 to adapt the style color blue, but this kind of blue, not just blue, because we could have typed in blue. And then we start our text. So we close the style. We're saying the style is this inline CSS, and then we close H1, and then we close our body, and we close our HTML2. So we're adapting a inline style for H1. So we are overriding perhaps all CSS H1 that maybe we set that would have a specific color. So we're kind of overriding at this point with one set of stuff. So that is an extracting a little piece of element that you would that you will see for your title. And then, okay, so what we're going to do now is okay. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of a together practice of what we would think that some of the elements or some of the HTML will be for this page. So on the left, what we have is on the right hand side, we have a specific page that could be on the web, could be on the internet. We have a heading, we have the paragraph, and we have, I call it the bullet points. My screen is just, and then we have a bullet list as well. So let's try to see if we can name some of the if we were to look at the code, if we were to do view right code, right source, what would be some of the elements or some of the HTML elements that we think that we would see on this specific page? And maybe it's easier to start from the beginning, from the top. What would be some of the elements that you think that you would see in the code?
Heading.
So your head.
Yeah.
Okay. So we would see something for head, and then we would see the equivalent of head, right?
Yeah.
Where do we think this element would be on the page?
Top.
Okay, good. Yeah, very close to the top. Options. If we start at the very top of the code, if we were to look at the very top of the code, what would be maybe some, like the very first element that we may see?
First
type.
would be doc type, yeah.
Yes. So we will see doc type, this little exclamation mark, HTML. Okay. Just so that you know, in reality, you would have to be very picky not to have spaces and have exactly, but I'm not picky. I'm not going to be super picky. I want you to understand some of the basic pieces in it, but you would need to know there's no spaces. And doc type, I don't even know if, I think there's no spaces. It's all doc type altogether. If you're not sure, you go back. Is there a space here or not? Honestly, right now, so Tony said, yes, there is. Good. Okay, so it looks like I'm pretty good. There's just no spaces, right? You don't need to go to that level, but if you're a real developer, you would. What else do we see? So if we rethink, let's do this. So we would have our doc type, HTML. Then we said we would have our HTML, right? Then if we wanted to make it a little bit cleaner to read, we will bear ahead. What else do we, what other elements do we think that we would see?
Body.
Okay, so there would be a body.
Inside of body, we would have H1. No, we would have a title. And we would have a paragraph P.
Okay, we could have a paragraph at some point.
And since this have bullets, so we would have a list tag as well.
Yeah, unlisted list or unordered list. So that will be your bullet. And then we would close. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then we would have our swimming. Blah, blah, blah. We would have I like to go swimming. So I'm trying to kind of map these elements. Swimming. And then our unlisted list here, we would probably maybe have a BR thing is to break, to move to the next. So if we want to have a separation here, a break, I think it's the BR. And that's really it. And then we could have some instructions to developers, and we will have our closing HTML. Pretty simple. There's no link, no images, nothing of this. Anything else that we feel that we're missing?
Yeah, when we start, we should not forget to put meta char set, because if you don't put that tag, it will not, the web page will not resize to if somebody was to open a web page on the mobile. So that's a very important tag.
Yes. What was that tag? Sorry, I missed that tag.
It's meta char set.
Okay. Source set. Yeah.
Char set. CHARSET, I think.
Oh, okay. Good. So this is becoming very more specific and advanced. So, but yes, resizing, how to resize to specific mobile and devices. And there are tons of other, okay, which I don't expect anybody from this class to know, but at least to have a sense of bit of some of the basics in the structure. But thank you. This is very useful as well. Okay, so I don't know if, I think I might have the answer on the next page. Let's see what we had as an answer. For, okay, so what did we put? So, okay, HTML, P1, H1, H, and then we might have, I think I had a little bit more develop or not. Okay, so what, I think we did good. Okay, so we even had a task of, if we were to write the code for this specific, but we will look at it together. Okay, so we will look at that if we were to do the code, the piece of code together, what it may look like. I did not include for the device, obviously. Okay, so we said if we want to make sure that in our code, we have elements that we know that are important. So we will look at what having our page title. So for swimming, and that we know is important for SEO. So our page title, and then we've said we want to include some description. So here what I did is, step one, we looked at what do we think some of the elements will be. Now I'm saying, let's make sure that we were to include the following elements into our code too for search engine optimization, okay? So the page title will be swimming in the summer. Our description will be find out why I enjoy swimming in the summer as a favorite activity, which you will see on Google. Search result 2, and some of the keywords. Then I said, let's indicate or have a sense of what is visible to Google only, what is visible to user or customers. I want to bold. I said, let's bold 3 reasons. So I'm trying to put like some in style of a style that I want. I want to italic swimming. So we want to do swimming. We want to bold these elements and make the main header red as well. If we were to make them header reds, then what would be some of the piece of code and what the code could look like for the specific element. Okay, so we have our HTML. Good, we have our opening HTML. Then we say we're gonna have our head. Then we have our title. So this is usually the order. And if you see, I'm trying to indent as well so they're easier to read so that I can see my opening, my closing HTML. Then I said the title will be swimming in the summer, and then I close my title. So I'm done with the title. Then I move on with meta. So the meta name description. And so this is a type, right? And the content is find out why I enjoy swimming. And then I close the specific meta name description. Then I put my meta name keywords, and then I say my keywords, swimming, summer, exercising, great. Then I had nothing else for search engine optimization in my specific header, and then I close my header. Then I move to my other type of HTML tags, and this one is called body. So I'm opening body. This is where now you kind of start thinking about the text, what I see as a customer. Then I say my first header, I like to go swimming. Then I close my header one. Then I have a paragraph. So I'm opening my paragraph B. Swimming is my favorite activity, blah, blah, blah. I would type in all of this into this. Then I close my paragraph. Then I want to bold there are 3 reasons I like to swim as well. Now, if I want to really have this on a different line, I think I need to have my BR. Is that correct, Tony? If I wanted to?
Even if we do not put BR, but if you close the paragraph tag and if you reopen it, it would automatically be in the next line. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Then I say, I'm going to have bold there are 3 reasons. So I've reopened my paragraph. And as we just said, because I closed it, then it just goes to the next line. But I reopen another paragraph and I say, there are 3 reasons I want to have bold. And then here, because I want to do on order, it should really be on EL. And I have my first item. So I get lots of exercises. Then the next list of my item, I enjoy the freedom. Then my next item, I have an opportunity to be in the sun. Then I close my list. Then I close. Oh, okay. So there's a UL missing then in here. See, when I said I'm not going to penalize for people who are not being super specific. Okay, I want you to understand high-level principles. And then I close my list. Then I close my body. I have no more text. Then I close my HTML. So that could be an example of an acceptable code for that specific page. But the instruction elements that I give you, this is as far as you will go from coding that I will ask you to do in the exam on Thursday or Friday. Okay. But you will be able to practice some of these elements. So all of this viewable to the customer, but we have our head and we have our titles that you will see on your browser that the customer is not going to see, but this will be all for Google. And at some point, we're going to see how do I add links or images as well in here if I want to as well. So that was one. Okay. Let's see what another piece of code, the code will look for the specific element too. So I give you the main title, my story, the main header, the story of my life, and then that will be your H1. And then the body as well. So our P, our body, and nothing else. So okay. So doc type with space HTML, and then you open up your HTML, and then you have your head. With things like this, info for search engine, but you would want to include your meta keywords, your meta description as well. You would want to be a little bit more detail as well to give more elements to Google. Then your title. Okay, so we have our title, and then we close our head, and then we have our opening body. It will adapt the regular style because we didn't put any style, so we will probably use just the standard conventional style from HTML. And then your body, close your body, and then your HTML code too as well. And then we have another example here of, now I give you a piece of text, and then let's see, if we were to write the HTML code for that specific piece of text, what could that look like? So we know we're gonna have doc type HTML, we're gonna have HTML, we're gonna have head, we're gonna have title. I didn't give you instructions for anything in the head at this point, but so if we were to just look at this piece of code and say, we're not gonna put title, not gonna head, so we will have most title, the doc type HTML, we can have our HTML. Let's say I'm not putting any head, and I'm just going directly into my body if I want. Then I'm gonna have my H1. I'm gonna have my I can do my paragraph as well, and have my school paper. I can close if I want. Then I'm gonna have my footer. So there's a specific tag as well that I can do footer, which I will show you on the page. And then I'm gonna have my closing HTML. And here we have an address. So we're gonna see the tag for the email, what the email in the tag will look for, the email for the tag. Okay, so let's see if there are elements that we've missed. Doc type HTML, my body. So, and then it goes, so there's no head, right? We had no head in this, but you should always have a head in the title. You should always have at least some meta as well. But we have our header, and then we have our header H1. And we also even using they're using H3. They're not even using really the body in this case. So they're skipping. They're not even putting body. So they're only using H1, H3, and then the footer element. Or most likely you will have a body because you're going to have some text. So there is a tag for footer, and then you have your paragraph, and then you have your email. So this is how you would do a reference to your email. If you wanted to do an email, insert a specific email. And this is how you do a link to the email. And then you'll see how do we do link to a URL address, a web page. Then you have your copyright, and then your footer. So you close your footer, and then you close your body because we were open with a body, and then you will close your HTML as well. So I would say that's probably a simplistic way to, I haven't used really the footer tag per se. Most likely footer will be just a common element on all pages. And you're not going to have to do it on all of the pages. It will be a common element that you would want to follow as a standard. Okay, so I have another practice for this particular for this. Let's see how many practice do we have. More practice do we have? And then 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 1, 2. Okay, there are 2 practice elements. So at this point, I think it's time for us and you to try to do the practice. And how do we do the practice is we move on to one of the editor that I gave you yesterday. And there's no other way than just start really doing the practice. So what I have done is on today's deck, I have given you the solution right after the practice. So there's try to do it yourself, we do it. And then there's 1 and there's 2, and then I give you the solution as well. Now, I have the cheat sheet as well for some of the tags. So let's just look at the cheat sheet, but we will move on into the practice. So this is a cheat sheet where you have all the tags, most of the tags that you're going to be using that you can refer to. So we have obviously HTML, head, title, meta, H1, UBR for a single line break. But if you just close your paragraph and you do P again, it will move on to the next line. Don't worry about buttons. Don't worry about div or script, the links. And then I have other cheat sheet as well. So let's maybe look at how do we do a link. So I want to show you how do you do a link. So you'll know at least how do we do a link. using the example in the exercise that I give you. So here I have a link. Visit my LinkedIn. Okay. So how do we do this into the code? There's a specific tags for link. And how do we do this? So is here. You have opening brackets, a reference. So a space reference equal. And then you put the actual URL. Then you close, and then you list what do you want the link to say. So here we've shown visit my LinkedIn, and we know it will be hyperlinked. Then you close your A for your link and brackets, and this is how you create the link. So what's the code goes in reverse. So you first have to give the URL, and then you say what do you want the user to click on, and then the system will know that this is a link. So you first have to insert the URL, which we do, and then you say visit my LinkedIn is what will be the hyperlink or the link to that specific URL. So it's first the URL, and then it's to me it's kind of the opposite. You would kind of think that you would put what you want the link to and then to where, but you say to where and then what is the hyperlink. It seems to be the opposite of how we think. So I give you the answer to how do we insert links into HTML code. So here it's part of your P for your paragraph, and then so it's an extra line, so it'll create a new line, and then you always do A as your A for link, H reference equal quotes or this, and your URL, and then you close, and then you close, and then you put what you want to be the hyperlink. And don't forget, this is how you will do your links to anywhere that you want to link to an external link. Now, it could be an external link, it could be in page to a different page, different pages, whatever. So what I would do is I would start with the first practice, which is look at a page, try to maybe list the elements. And then you should always put your doc type HTML and then your HTML, then think about what should be the next. I don't have here a header, anything for the header, but you could make it up too. You could say, I'm going to have a title. For this page, my header is going to call my heading. And then you're going to use title, close your head if you have a head, then move on into your body, what your body will be. So here you could say that this will be a H1. You could say this will be your body. This will be an image. Okay, we haven't looked at image, and this will be your link as well. So let me see where the specific tag is for images so that you can do the So with the images, so I think we're missing a piece of the image. So let me just go back as well. Okay, so Tony, what's the specific line of code for the images? I'm just going to put it here as well. So is it EMG? And I think that's about a reference as well. Is it EMG reference? And then you put the location for the images. So, but with images, because of you're not going to be able to test the images because if they're not where the web page is, you are not going to be able to see it. But all you need to know is about the images AMG for the tag where you want to insert images, and you would probably do a P as well. And then you would have your images, and then you would close your P. So image tag, just like A for links, the tags, and then you have to give the name of the file name and also the location. Unless it's there, we'll look for where the file is. That's really all you need to know. You will not be expected for your code on the Thursday to be able to work and link to an image that the image will load. It's gonna be impossible to do. Very difficult because we don't have the environment where everything lives in. So you will not be able to see and test it. But if you see EMG, then you know it's for your code, for your images that you would.
If it's image src and then you paste the URL.
But it depends where your images is located.
Yeah,
And
so if it's on your, I think, laptop, it's image src.
okay, but you
Yeah.
know what? We don't need to know. We just need to know there's the images, but thank you. But it's because we're not even able to test and see that it's all loading environment. It gets very, very complex, more advanced and more complex. I just want the class to know EMG is where is that will be the tag, and that's all good. Thank you. So, okay, so remember to use the cheat sheet too, but really what you want to do is you want to try to do the specific, so, okay, I give you the solution for images here. If we want to be super, so paragraph and then your image. So this is where it's URLs and images have also used the reverse. So with images, you're saying, I want to say here, in this particular case, we have a piece of line before the image. Then we say opening tag EMG. So EMG is for images, SRC for source equal, and then it's the image name. In this case, we'll look for that image name wherever that code and that file is for the HTML. Now, if they're not in the same places, then you have to link to where it is. And this is where we're not going to be able to, we're not going to expect to, because we don't even have a live page anywhere. Our editing tool is a live page, but I don't expect you to make it work. But at least to show me what would be a tag for images. So you need to have something that at least looks like this, that I know that you understand that this tag will be read as an image, and it will be an image name. Okay. And then we're closing the paragraph. So this is how you would show if this image were in the same place that the file is, then it would find and look for that file name, photo.jpg. Okay. And then link. So our the link, how do we, and then here we have a link to somewhere. And then with a link, it's ahref, you give the URL, okay, and then you give the text, right? So it seems to be the opposite of what how we think. We normally think. We think of what the link will be and where, but here it's where and then what is the link called. It's kind of the reverse in the code, the way that we think, that we structure. And then we close our link, we close a paragraph, we close a body HTML. So I kind of show you what is the solution to the specific one, but I would like for you to think about, try to do this yourself. If the images, you can pause at this point and then look in the solution for the images. But the link, I've shown you the link, but at least think of some of the basic elements of your headers, or if you want to put a title, it's up to you too, into your head, your body, and then the other elements that follows to the end of your HTML. Okay, so that's one. There's a second practice as well. This one is maybe a little bit more advanced because it has even red in color and style if you want. So give yourself a try to what could be the HTML code for that specific basic page that we're looking at. So here we have the H1 in red. We have an image. We have a paragraph or a body. We have a on order or bulleted list. So what is the tag for bulleted list? Then we have a specific link. I give you the solution, but don't look at it as of yet. And then, but you can use some of the references as well. So do that from your desk, and then I'm here. Some of you already know a lot more than this, so You can do whatever. And then I don't know how long we will need for the 2 example, but I would say probably at least 15 minutes on your own. So what you should do is use the editor so that you can try on the editor by yourself for the first, and then to do, and then I'm here if there are any comments or any questions that you have, or if you have issues. And then let's take about 10-15 minutes. What time is it now? 11:15. Do you guys want to do a break at this point, or do you want to do a bit of the practice and then break? I encourage you to look at it. There's no other ways but to try to do it and jump and do it. And perhaps it might be easier at the beginning to maybe just list some of the items on the piece of paper of what you think the main elements will be, like the heads, images, or links, or bodies, or paragraphs. And then you can start thinking about them in the order as well. That's really the only way that you will know how comfortable you are. Again, what's important is understand the big pieces and the order and the conventions about the tagging as well. And then you can play with in the editor. So my favorite editing tools that I shared with you yesterday is the one that I can see side by side. So let me just go back to this one. So I'm going to share in the chat what that element is, which tool is. So I just share in the chat which one is my favorite. And it is the one that is the side-by-side, the HTML5 editor net. What I like about this editor is you can do in the visual editor what you can do is you can use the visual editor and see what the code is on the left-hand side of what you do on the visual editor and see what your code will be. So you can learn from the code and then adapt and adjust. That's also another way that you can learn about it too. But I like this one because it's side by side, where the other one you have to click on go and you have to scroll. It's not only it's side by side, but it's also real time. And you can play with format and see what happens with the format and what happens with the code. Now here they're using strong, but it's bold as well. It's the equivalent. So you can change to B. And I can do a title if I want. And I can say H1, then you see your code to the left. So as you play, which the element, then you can see what your code, how is the code affected in some of the code elements. So that's the other way. So you can start from the editor and then you can move on and see what you code. Or you can start from the code and see what happens to your page. That's a fun one. So let's spend a few minutes on practicing, and then we're going to move on to content CSS. And then I will be sharing with you some more elements that you can practice through your codes for the ones that are more advanced, or for the ones that really want to try on the editor as well. And there will be on Thursday one question where you're going to have to think about what will be the code or a potential piece of code for a specific page and a web page with specific elements. I will include the page title. I will include some search engine optimization element. So you need to make sure where they are. By now, you know, I think there'll be image or what will be the code the tag for the images, and then what could be the tag images for the link as well. So make sure that you understand these specific elements, but it'll be very, very basic. Individually, if you have any questions, I'm here. I'll be off from the video, but I'll be around, and then we'll bring everybody, and then we're going to talk about CSS as well. Okay.
Thank you, Yves.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Let's look at the potential code for some of the exercises that I share with you. And I did another one as well using one of the editor tools. And I know the answer is available on the next page, but I'm hoping that you did try to ask yourself what would be some of the main elements that you would need to include into your code. So when we look at the page here, we have a title. So we have a page header. So when I say title, you may be confused with the actual title tag, which you should have for your page, so that SEO and then the user on the browser will see. Then you have some text, a paragraph, we have an image, and we also have a link. So at least you know that you have 1, 2, 3, or 4 items, and then they each going to have a tag, and then the way that they will expect the code to be presented. And then let's look at a potential example of what that piece of code could be and could have been. So hopefully you have something that is similar, or and perhaps even better or more advanced if you've done coding in your career in previous life. Now we could have also the doc type if we wanted, which was not included here, but you could also have included it, even better. Then we have HTML. Now, first, and so I made up a title for the title tag, and we've inserted it into our head. So we could say this is the title, but obviously all the questions you need to ask yourself for search engine optimization are true for keywords, impactful, powerful keywords that you want. Then we close our head. We have nothing else in this specific. We did not put description, keywords, or any other content. Then we move on into our body. So this is where we have our text. So this is where we start showing things to a consumer. Then we said we're going to have an H1. So we have our H1, my heading. And then we have the first paragraph of the text. So we have our P. Then we close, then we have our second. We don't need to have the break lines, so that from the moment that we've closed, then we start, then we have our second paragraph that will show. Great, we close again. Then we have an image, so we have the text. So we somehow have to, then we'll have a paragraph and image. Then we insert the tag for image in the source equal and the name here of the image. It could be a URL linked to, if it's an image that is available to elsewhere through the internet. And then we have our closing paragraph. So that will be acceptable for the image. And then we have a link. So we have a link because we have a piece of text before. Then we know that with the link, we have a space H references equal, and then the link, the actual link that you want to link to. And then we close the brackets for your link, and then you have what will be the hyperlink to the link to the URL. So it seems to be the reverse, as I said, HTML guide. Then we close our A for a reference for a link. Then we close our paragraph. We're done. Then we close our body. We're done with our body, and we're done with HTML. So that you will have something similar to this in the on the exam on Thursday. So I will say these are the pieces. I may put I may have one or two, maybe I'll have some meta elements in the head. So, and it may be keywords or they may be descriptions as well. So this is where you would be inserting them, and you know how to view your code as well, which is very relevant for you as well as digital or SEO specialist expert. Did we all have something that looked like this into our code? I hope you all had a chance to do it. Did it look similar? Maybe, as I said, more advanced. But again, there might be multiple paragraphs that you would do onto your page. And we've seen that there's some complex and some line, but we have less than 20 line of codes here. So that's really simple. We obviously don't have CSS inserted here. We're going to learn more in a bit about what the CSS may do and what some of where we would insert it. Did we all have a chance to at least give it a try on our own?
The only thing that it will include is
Yeah.
in the image tag, you will include the alternative text.
For the image, yes.
Yeah, that is the only thing because, you know, it's very important for SEO.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
you alt tag as well. So that the reader and for SEO as well. Absolutely. So this is not going away. This is all very important too. But thank you, Tony. Yes. So you will need to have your alt tag as well to tell what the image is and what this image is about for users and the readers and SEO. Then there was another exercise also that I gave you that you can practice. If you haven't had a chance to do exercise number 2, then I will say, please do it outside of class. What's different here is that we have some color element, like specifically color element for the H1, and then we still have an image. We still, well, we have some bullet points, so they're unlisted, they're not on order. So you think of you for on order, but it's a list of items. And then when you see 1 or 2 or 3, then they're listed item as well. Then a link. So I provided a solution for you. And then what's unique to this particular element was we had said we wanted to put some style, okay? And we wanted to do H1 in red as well, and the specific font size, specific background color. I didn't expect you to know that from just looking at it, but this is how you could put some specific style into your head, and that would affect all of your H1 on this particular page. Why? Because it's in the head. So we're going to talk a little bit more in details. So you would say every time I have an H1, apply this color as well. That's pretty much what you're saying to the system. But we've learned that it's more effective to have the CSS external so that your entire site will be affected, and it's one file and one set of changes that will apply through all the site that you're linking to that CSS for that stuff. Then you will have, most likely, you have your body, and then you have your H1, and then you had your paragraph or image goes here. Then you had your image, and then we had the alt as well. So for my image, what is it? My profile. Then unique is the on order bullet points. And then for each items, you have brackets, LI, you close, then your second bracket item, your third bracket item, then you're done with your listing and you're done with your on order listed. Then we have the other element for image. So we have a new paragraph. We have our image. So where in the actual link, visit my web, done with my paragraph, I'm done with my body, and then I'm done with my HTML. Okay. So if you got to something close to this, this is awesome. If you haven't had a chance to practice this element, that I would say try to do it as well on your own, and then use the tool side-by-side tool. And I will show you the one that as I said, that I like to use. So this is the HTML5 editor net that I shared with you yesterday. And if it's easier for you to try by typing in directly into the editor and then see what the code actually does. So you can type here and then look at the code and see what it does. Then maybe this is a way for you to learn as well. But I have my main page title, but I've opened up with HTML. The tool did not put HTML at the top, but I've added it because we know it's important. Then I have my H1. Now it says strong, but I could also use bold if I wanted. And then my welcome to my web page, my paragraph. Then I have my link. Then I have the image as well. And then my image here is an external image, external link. So my image source, my URL, and then I have my alt. So it's a face image. And then there's a specific width that you can put in there too if you want. And then I'm closing my HTML, but I closed my P before as well. So this tool is fun because you don't have to go submit anything. As you do, it changes on your left. You could use this tool if you wanted to help you with your practice, definitely, or even I would say even on Thursday too. So as I said, the goal is not to make you a developer coder because it will take you a long time, but at least you understand the basics and be able to read it. That is really what I'm more interested in, and that's what I will be assessing you on. Okay. So in this deck, you'll have the basic cheat sheet. You have more of an advanced cheat sheet too. And then now we're going to move on into CSS. So I'm hoping to cover as much as we can from CSS. And then tomorrow we're going to be able to talk about optimization too in the trends as well. So there will not be more coding and doing more coding. So if you want to do more in advance, do the practice that I gave you. And if you want to learn more about coding, then you can do some other courses online too for about HTML and coding. And as I said, you shouldn't be expected to be coder when you're a digital specialist, but knowing how to read and where to see and now the tags and what to do, that will help you to be able to do some basic troubleshooting in the lines of search engine optimization or other things that you maybe just be curious in, but you should not be the one coding and the one fixing. What is CSS? So we've already been talking about what is CSS cascading style sheet. So there are multiple ways to insert your CSS, and we've already looked at some of them, and some of them are more effective. So you're going to hear inline styles, and I will show you visually what that looks like. So you can insert inline styles. So that would be where you have, let's say, your tag P or your tag H1, so that you're in the code, in the page, you say, for this specific piece of item or tag, use the following style. Using the style tag within the HTML header, so on the head, which will affect anything below it for that specific page, and or creating and then linking to an external site, which is probably the most effective because it's outside of your code, and then it's for any pages that use it's one file that you just have to update. It's a lot quicker and it's more efficient. It's what also definitely Google likes as well. Basic style sheets usually modify the appearance. So we're trying to change the appearance visual of HTML tags such as body and P. So you're trying to take over the visual, right? Style. So styles, cascading. And when we say cascading, so it's you want to apply the changes to everything that is below, but it will depend on where you've inserted it. And then you may hear of class of styles and then class attributes. Don't need to know the inside and the details, but you may come across as styles and attributes when you hear CSS. So as we've said, CSS, cascading style sheets. So everything, you're hoping that everything will cascade and apply what you will give as a style to your code, to your HTML tags. And it's really how you should be setting the look and feel of a website through a style sheet and not necessarily through the code, through the HTML code per se. So you can control color, size, position of text, and other HTML elements, while the HTML files. So we're focusing on style position, where HTML files, as we've said, will define the content. What is on the page? How is it organized? Then you want to separate them for SEO, for speed, for many other reasons, to change the color scheme without having to rewrite your entire website too. So without touching the HTML code, I can affect the style through my CSS and through one file or external file. And then we know that the style will be applied to a parent element, will be applied to all the children elements within the parent. So, and then for example, setting the color of body text will mean all headings and paragraph within the body will also have the same color too. So, and that is why we call it cascading style. Okay, another definition. So I gave another definition of when you think of CSS, think of look and feel of a page. And then we want to control text, font spacing between paragraph if you want. You'll be able to put div. Div often is about spacing too. So there's many things. And the designer, the graphic or designer will be the ones that hopefully will own and maintain the CSS. They will know their CSS. They will, sometimes the CSS breaks, and you will see that sometimes the connection may break to an external CSS, and you'll come to a page and it looks like just code and white and just a bunch of links and items. Even the navigation will look like links. The navigation and the style is usually done through your CSS as well. And then CSS is easy to learn, understand, but it provides powerful control over the presentation. So it's about the presentation layer. If we remember, we had our little diagram. CSS was on the side. Here, it was visual. We need both. And then your code. This is the what, and this is more how it actually looks. And then you need to have both for the page to look functional, pretty, and be aligned on your brand, and also pleasing and appealing and looking professional. Okay, so HTML was, there was a time where there wasn't necessarily CSS that were created, and we were applying style within the HTML like we would do with in front of a tag. So we would do bold, all of these things, right, that we saw for P or even for H1. But it was really never, HTML was never intended to contain tags for formatting a web page. HTML was created to describe the content. So a heading, this is a heading, this is a paragraph. And then fonts, color were added to HTML for specification. It started to become a nightmare for web developers. Development of large website, many pages where fonts and color were added to every single page. And that's key, become a long and expensive process. So we need to think more effectively. And this problem, to solve this problem, the World Wide Web Consortium that we show you created CSS. CSS removed the style formatting from the HTML page. That's really what you have to think about when you think of CSS. And that's the preferred way for Google as well, for all the reasons that we know. Okay, so if we look at how is the CSS inserted, so we know that there are 3 ways that it can be inserted, which can spend a bit more time on visually where on the codes where you might see the insertion, and we've seen some already. So internal CSS sheet should be used when a single document has a unique style. So we're going to see what internal is for on the specific page. You define internal styles in the head section of an HTML page by using the style tag. So this is a piece of code. So we have our code, and we've said HTML head link style sheets. Now we have some style. So what we're saying is anything below it, apply the style. And this is a code for a page, for a single page. We said, okay, it's effective for this page because I'm saying apply the style to the entire page for all of the elements that you will put. But if I have 1,000 pages, that's not effective. This is where you want to do your external. But perhaps for this page, I want to have a unique look and feel when it comes to background, color, font size, header, links, anything. Then I may have a unique style that I will apply to this page, but it should be a one-time off. External will be very efficient when you have many, many pages so that all of your style is across and you don't have to repeat it on each single pages. Okay, so you want to have one CSS as opposed to have too many styles, but you can have an exception for a page, and then you will have to have your own style to that specific page. But it will be more efficient if you do it inside your head so that you don't have style throughout your HTML codes. And if you have to make changes, then it becomes more multiple changes. But at minimum, try to have your style in this section so that everything below it is affected. But you will want to have a line of style sometime to a specific placement in your text. So you have a style here with your body, you say, I'm going to have color for this specific text. But you may have then another piece of line that you have another style and you have another color of blue. And then you have text, etc. And then it's repeated. And but if you have to make a change and you all want to go to green, then you're going to have to change them all. 1, 2, 3, not effective, as opposed to perhaps at least having it into your head. So all your text is applied. But you should really do this exceptionally. And the designer should do this exceptionally, and hopefully they're familiar. Now, the optimal is to do the external. And we've learned that the external is the one that you have in your head. You can have a link to an external file that will dictate the entire style of CSS for all of your pages and all for your web, that you can only do and have to change once, and it will be reflected to where all pages are calling that specific style to that CSS. That is what you should do. But sometimes there are times where you want to do it at a page level. So that will be your head in here. And or you will do inline. So your choice should be 1, 2, or 3 in terms of effectiveness as well on the code and on the HTML. Okay, so you should know about the differences of the 3 different and what maybe some of the benefits or why you would use external or internal or inline. That's really all you need to know. You don't need to know the actual code. But knowing that the 3 options and what maybe why you would use external as being more efficient, or when you would use internal, and the internal usually is into your head or inline, you need to understand the differences between those 3. Okay. And then here I show you where you would potentially insert your CSS that we just talked about. So if we look into, we have our external link, external style sheet. So it's going out to a file that is completely outside of your code. This is how you would do into your head. And Tony had showed us previously one example that we had. Now you can do internal. So it's everything that will go below will be affected. But you're still at least leveraging into your head. So we're saying about our alignment, we're talking a bit of background too in here. So we're saying we want to align to the right, and then we also want to use a background color, a specific color, background color. But maybe I do want to use a different style or alignment for one specific element of paragraph, line of item into my outline, and then I will do it directly into my body on the page. But I just have to remember that I may have to change it because maybe someone will want to change the overall, that specific element, which we know is not efficient, but there are times where you may want to do it. And then we close our code. So this would be 1, 2, or 3 in terms of preferences, but we understand that sometimes there are exceptions, but hopefully your designer is well aware of where and how he's been applying it to. So this is just another example of where and how you can insert as well, which is similar to what we just looked about your external, internal, or your in style as well. And that is all of what you need to know for CSS. Here's the beauty for CSS. So again, it's affecting the style and the visual of your site. You can change a look and feel for an entire website quite easily if you've done a good job on how you've set up your CSS through one file, through an external site file. If you can't do this for some reason, then I would really challenge the designer. Then maybe perhaps at least they've done on the header. So at least the header is at the page affecting anything on that page, but that's not effective because you may have 1,000 pages that you need to go and change your style and in style. So the 3 type, make sure that you understand what the different type. I will not be asking you to code me specific give me a CSS file and also know all of the tags and the spacing and all of the elements, but at least be familiar or know that it's all about visual. And you can play color, you can play with font size, you can play with alignment. So, and all these tags are also available in any of the cheat sheet. There's way more information about CSS and obviously HTML on all the tools and resources that I give you. If you're curious, want to know more, you can. But you will not be expected to know more than what I have shared with you for CSS, for what you know, and also for coding for what we've talked about tonight. In this PowerPoint, for the ones that want to go further in your journey, I give you more hints or more insights about some terms that you may see. So nesting and order on order items that you can do. So div, there's more information. I do talk about links, hyperlinks as well, or how you do anchors, email, how do you want to hyperlink to an email? So we've seen, I think email is one of our code or example. So this is more for your reference. And there's a tool to do validating your HTML as well. So the W3C, which is a World Consortium, is really engaged with setting the standard for HTML, but also even helping with accessibility, some of the accessibility requirements as well, and which at the end help the user experience, and which Google likes for search engine, which will help you with conversion and which will help you for better ranking as well. So that is CSS, that is HTML, and then do some practice, go ahead and do some practice, use some of the editor tools, and experiment, play with adding in style if you want to, and see what happens to your text. And then tomorrow we are going to talk about CMS. So we're going to look more about WordPress and also trends, optimization, I think. And we're closing. So now we're closing, getting to the end of the module. And then on Thursday, we'll talk about what the assignment, the final assignment will be. And I will give you more details about the timing and the duration for the assignment as well. Now, are there any questions about anything from today or anything about CSS that you're unclear, that you would like to ask or discuss?
If you want to use or to have an experience with code and live code and the visual experience, you could use a software from Adobe. It's called Dreamweaver.
Oh yeah, I know Dreamweaver.
Yeah, Dreamweaver is a good tool to start because you will see the code and you will see the changes in real time. When you use just an hypertext editor, most of the time you will see the text and you will need to reload the page, and sometimes you have the old page and not the code. So it's a good tool to start with the code for someone who wants to check what the code does in real time. That is one way.
Awesome. So it's funny because I think Dreamweaver was probably the tool or the web auditing tool back then in the 2000, early 2000. I almost had forgot about Dreamweaver. I didn't even think it was still around.
Yeah, they improve a lot. So you still could use it. But obviously, if you are code oriented, you will prefer a different tool. But if you are like a web designer or maybe a designer, it's a tool that it will help you because, for example, you could go to InDesign, or you could go to Photoshop and you could have a mock-up, a color mock-up of your website, and it will help you to export the website to Dreamweaver. So that way you will have the design part, you will have the code or the generated code from Adobe, and you will take a look to the code and make changes if you want.
That's awesome. So I should probably take another peek at it, and which, as you said, I'm sure it has really changed since the old days. I put it in the chat, so for anybody, if anybody wants to look into it too, that would be a good resource. Thank you, Tony. You're so resourceful.
You could also use VS Code for actual like HTML coding, wherein you can connect it to the live server even if you don't have. So like it's called VS Code.
VS Code?
V for Victor, S for Susie, VS Code.
Okay.
You could just
Cool.
download it, and if you want to see, I can show you maybe.
Yeah, do you want to show it to us quickly?
Yeah, I can. Yes, for sure.
That would be awesome. Thank you, Manali.
So, is anybody able to see my screen? Everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is like I was doing this assignment. This is VS Code. So you could just download it. I'll show you like do you see it here? So this thing, Visual Studio Code.
Yes.
Yeah, I've
Oh,
just downloaded.
Visual Studio. I think I'm familiar with Visual Studio.
So this is the code that for the like I was writing whatever was about the parrot picture. So this is what I wrote. And then, so here is a folder I made, TSoM practice. You right click, go open with live server. So the moment you click open with live server, it is going to open on Google like this. So you know what you have done. So like, you know, my heading, this is the first paragraph of text. This is the, so see, like I have written a wrong spelling of text. So I go to VS Code again. Here is my text. So I don't know why isn't coming. I Control S, I save it. And I again open it with live server and see these spelling is
awesome.
Like that. So you could do it for your practice. So, you know, I wrote a wrong code, so the image did not resize itself. But that's how you can practice your codes. If somebody's doing that, yeah.
You see, teamwork is good because we all have more information and pieces together that makes it better. This is very good. Thank you so much, Manali, for sharing as well, and Tony. In the class, please feel free to go and try and experiment those tools too. So, and there's more, I'm sure, to discover in the tools, the possibilities. Perfect. Okay, so, well, we're done for today, and my apology if we started class a little bit later, but we will see you tomorrow for the rest of the module, and I hope you'll have a good afternoon. So now, if you feel overwhelmed or intimidated by coding, that's okay, because it can be overwhelming, but do some practice and try to do some of the tools that Manali and Tony has shared with us, and then tomorrow we can look at if you have any other questions or any things that you want to ask, and then we will continue with the content. So I hope you will enjoy your afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow. We almost finished. You'll get another break, and then you move on to your next module. You're almost halfway at this point.
Perfect. Thank you.
See you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.
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 Bye.